from the City of Presidents. It's the All About Quincy podcast. This is your host, John Melley. Join me as we explore the history, hidden gems, and highlight the businesses with great stories that all tell the tale why Quincy, Massachusetts is a great place to live. Hey there, it's John. How are you? Thanks for spending time with me today. I do appreciate it. We're featuring another woman-owned business here in Quincy. My guest is Olivia Palazzi, and we are friends. And I explain how we got to know each other during my conversation with Olivia. But I'm really excited because I got to tell you about some statistics going on here with this podcast. First of all, if you're not following us on Instagram, we're at All About Quincy Podcast. Just search for All About Quincy Podcast on Instagram. Start following us. We've got 589 followers there, and we do some fun things there. We do a little contest called Where in Quincy, where there's a little snapshot of a place within the city of Quincy. And we do a thing where if you guess correctly, I give you a shout out during the episode. We've got a new picture on All About Quincy Podcast on Instagram. It's right there. Where in Quincy. It's an interesting little, I don't want to say. You got to go there to find out. But we want you to check that out. If you're one of the people that guesses it correctly, we'll give you a shout out in the next episode of the podcast. I also have to say, we've gotten a lot of fun feedback on, I produced a takeoff, if you will, on the intro to The Sopranos, but it's about Quincy. I shot and edited all of the video footage and mixed it up with the music that was available on Instagram, and it's kind of fun. So another reason for you to go and check out our Instagram page at All About Quincy Podcast on Instagram. And another thing I've got to tell you about is, as of this recording, we have had 4,912 unique downloads of all the various odd and sundry episodes of the All About Quincy podcast, which I want to thank you. And people have been emailing and suggesting guests, and I'm always open to that. And thank you. If I haven't had a chance to reply back to your suggestion, I apologize. It's been kind of busy here. The other thing I want to let you know is go to our website, allaboutquincypodcast.com. And when you do that, you're going to get an opportunity to sign up for our free weekly newsletter called All About Quincy Happenings. And there's a handful of events going on around the city of Quincy. Some of them are ticketed events that you have to pay for, but most of them are free, and they're right here in the city. And it's only a handful of events, but you can make some plans with that. We don't spam you. You only get that like once a week, and then we do email you when we get a new episode published. So if you're on that list, you will get an email saying that this episode that you're listening to right now is available. At any rate, I hope you do that. I am also excited to tell you that this episode of the All About Quincy podcast is sponsored by Black's Creek Barbecue. I'm pumped Lorenzo is sponsoring this episode. Now, if you like barbecue, and who doesn't, Black's Creek Barbecue is it. His barbecue stands at 211 C Street. Now, if you remember Grumpy White's, then you know exactly where to go for barbecued ribs, chicken, baked beans, mac and cheese, cornbread, all the essentials and lots of extras. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about Lorenzo and Black's Creek Barbecue a little later in the episode. But for now, let's get to my conversation with Olivia Palazzi. Well, welcome back. As I said at the beginning of the episode, my guest today is Olivia Palazzi. She is the founder and owner of Alpha Environmental Inspections. And I know Olivia through our common love of canine companions. She is the proud owner of Zeus and Athena, and I am the proud owner of Quinn and Trudy. And I've gotten to know Olivia over the years in the park with our dogs playing together and all that kind of good stuff. And I said, hey, Olivia, let's get you on the show to talk about your business. So I'm really excited to have you here. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Just ducky. Tell us your story. You started this business when?
I started Alpha Environmental Inspections in October of 2023. Prior to that, I was working under my aunt's name, DCM Environmental Inspections. But in October of 23, I decided I already have my own clients. I know what I'm doing. Just open my own company under my name, my brand.
Excellent. So how did this all start for you? Did you go to school for this? Tell us your story. Well, how did you get into this business and what is it about what you do that motivates you?
I was in school for environmental science. I was studying environmental policy, looking to work for the EPA someday. My aunt, as I said before, had a consulting company. She actually was looking to sell her business. So she says, Olivia, do you want to work in an office or do you want to actually get in the field and make a difference? And growing up, my dad owned a construction company. So I loved the idea of, being your own boss. I loved visiting the construction sites when I was little. So I said, okay, I think I can do this. So I did have to do some certification courses. I had to do an apprenticeship for my lead inspector license. But ever since then, I was hooked. I mean, in school, we didn't learn about mold or asbestos or lead paint or any of those kinds of environmental hazards. But realizing how many people are dealing with that on a day-to-day basis is one, very concerning. And two, it's like, how can we worry about any other environment if we can't take care of ourselves in our own homes?
That's very true. There was an episode that I had with Earl Futzenheimer a couple of episodes back, and one of the things he was going off on was the whole concept of think globally but act locally. And we'd keep talking about these big concepts, but if we can't pick up the plastic and the dog poop that's in our own backyard, then that's really where it all starts. It starts at a micro level and expands outward. And so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're thinking, you know what? Let's tackle some of these immediate things on a smaller level, but it's going to have a greater immediate impact for the people that you're actually doing the work for. And you can replicate that over and over and over with all of your clients.
Exactly.
What was it about this that hooked you?
I would say, you go into someone's house, they're having issues that they don't understand or that they can't explain. Most of the time, I can identify those issues for them throughout, an inspection, testing services, all of that. And then finding an end result is always what is the most rewarding to me. Hey, we got rid of this mold issue. You have a clean environment now. We abated the lead paint. Your child will be safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's like an immediate satisfaction, right? I don't have to wait 20, 50 years to see the benefit of this problem. It's almost immediate. As soon as we find the problem, address it, get a clearance report, then they're good to go.
A moment ago, Olivia, you mentioned that people are having issues and they may not understand what's going on. What are some of the, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, symptoms that someone may be experiencing if they have a mold issue, but they don't know about it, or a lead paint problem, or an asbestos issue that they may not even be aware of? What are some of the things that people typically come to you with and say, hey, you know what? I mean, is it like I've got a runny nose or a cough? I mean, what is it that people are telling you is the problem that they're hoping you can help diagnose?
It definitely varies. I'll give you an example. I had a client call me. She says, my 4-year-old daughter is in the hospital getting lung x-rays. Something's in my condo, but my condo was built last year. So I go, sure enough, every room had what you would technically call black mold. So these were strains of mold that are linked to water damage. And then the symptoms in the individual varies, but in this child, she was having asthma attacks. She had to have blood work done. And this is a brand new building, which stemmed from a faulty roof. So even to this day, I mean, that was, I believe, 2 years ago that started. They're still in a lawsuit with their builder.
Wow. What is black mold?
Well, black mold is lack of a better word. Like, it's not a technical term, but everyone knows, oh, black mold. But when we refer to black mold, I would say it's a mold that's linked to water damage, often is black, but not all mold that is black is black mold, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, it's all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what is it? A client contacts you and says, hey, I need you to do an inspection, or these are the issues that I'm having. What's your process? What happens?
So I go to the site. Depending if the client knows of any issues in their house, I'll check those out. But say someone just calls me and says, I don't feel good. I have no idea what it is. Go through the house, look through any areas with plumbing, like the kitchen, the bathroom, check out the basement, check out the attic, look under windows, anywhere that you would suspect to be a leak. So we start there. Air sampling in rooms, I usually recommend doing, what's the room you spend the most time in? Your office, your bedroom, your living room. Test those areas. If there is water damage in the ceiling or the walls, I can put a hole in the ceiling or wall and actually run a sample from inside the wall. So that will tell us, there's a leak coming in through the side, there's elevated mold levels inside your wall. It is or it is not affecting the air quality of, say, your bedroom. Then, plan remediation based off of that.
So when you say you put a hole in the wall, how big of a hole are we talking about? Because people hear, I don't want somebody to come to my house and punch holes in my walls. I mean, are we talking like, a couple of inches? Are we talking about, the diameter of a pencil? What are we doing here?
The hole is like a little bigger than a quarter. I'd say like half dollar size.
Oh, okay.
Fun fact, I do plan on training the dogs to search for mold.
We should step back on a little bit because the name of your company is Alpha, and is that and you've got, I'm assuming Zeus is your logo.
Mm-hmm.
So Zeus is your German Shepherd, and I have to say, Zeus is an awesome dog, and you've done an amazing job training him. So that's cool. So you're going to be able to use Zeus in your business. We had bats, and this company that we hired to get rid of bats in our belfry, in our attic, they had a Jack Russell Terrier, a small, full Jack Russell Terrier. He was older, but he was actually trained. He could climb ladders and sniff around and all kinds of stuff. So you're going to be training the dog to be able to do that. So that would help you not have to drill holes. Is that the idea?
So the idea behind training Zeus to search for mold is, one, not having to drill holes in people's walls, and two, if someone has no idea what's going on and they need me to test their entire house, that can be very time consuming, as well as, get pricey with the number of samples you do. So if I can train Zeus to go find the mold for me, he's so fast and so precise in his scent training that, he can probably get through a house in like a quarter of the time that it would take me to test. And then based on, if he alerts me to mold, then I can run a sample there and just see what kind of mold it is. But at least I'll know I'm looking in the right spot.
That makes a lot of sense. You said it'll cut down the amount of time it takes for you to do the inspection. What's a typical, I know that properties are different sizes and it varies, but on average, how long does it take for you to do an inspection?
I would say on average about like an hour.
Okay.
Some properties, like I've had 2 inspections recently that took 3 hours just because we were looking throughout the entire house. So it's those kinds of jobs that I would love to have him there with me.
What are some of the signs that someone may be experiencing that says, geez, you know what? I wonder if I shouldn't have an inspection. What are some of the things people experience? So I'll give you an example. I interviewed an audiologist years ago, and he was talking about hearing losses. Now, I've worked in radio and had headphones and loudspeakers and a lot of rock concerts and drums and all kinds of stuff. One of the questions I asked him was, so if somebody was wondering whether or not they should have a hearing test, what are some of the signs that people should be looking for that would say, hey, maybe I ought to get my hearing checked? And he started to go through this list of things. And every item that he mentioned, I was more and more going, oh, no. And I wound up going and having my hearing tested a year later. And I now have a set of hearing aids. But, similar to that, what are some of the telltale signs that somebody should, hey, you know what? Maybe I should have my house inspected for mold or lead paint or asbestos. Can you share that?
Yeah, for sure. So the symptoms are definitely going to differ for each substrate that you're testing for. For example, lead paint. The biggest thing with lead is children under 6. So you go to the doctor, you get your baby's blood tested for lead every so often. If the lead levels are going up, or the doctor will tell you if they're elevated, the first thing you do, and you legally have to do, is get your home or your apartment tested for lead paint. For mold, the most common thing would be allergy-like symptoms, asthma, nausea, dizziness, confusion, brain fog. And then unfortunately, asbestos is a carcinogen. Most people, aren't showing symptoms for 30 years. That's like the latency period. So asbestos is a tricky one, but typically asbestos is not an issue unless it's disturbed. So, you knock down a wall that was positive for asbestos. You have asbestos piping, something of that sort.
Now, the asbestos was something that was wrapped around pipes to kind of insulate them. Is that correct?
That was one of the many uses of asbestos, yes.
Yeah. What else? Did they use asbestos in insulation or?
Insulation, sheetrock, joint compound, window glazing, floor tiles, you name it, asbestos was most likely in it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You got me thinking. I remember when I was a kid, there was this little crawl space and there was this paperish insulation tacked on the walls. And it was like this powdery, paperish type of stuff. And I'm going, and we were in there. We were like sweeping up stuff and cleaning it up, but it was all broken and everything like that. I really hope it's not asbestos.
Did it look like snow?
Gray, flaky stuff.
That sounds like blown in insulation, so hopefully you're fine.
Well.
How long ago was that?
Oh, man. 40, 50 years.
You should be in the clear.
I should be. Yeah. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Wouldn't that stink? Something you did as a kid playing around that doesn't show up until like you're in your mid-40s? Or
so something? I will be honest. With the asbestos, as far as I've heard, most people who experience asbestos-related illnesses worked with it. So think a lot of people on the steamboats, contractors, plumbers, architects. I don't know if there's probably studies, but I don't know how likely you are to end up with an asbestos-related illness after, just having one experience with it or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and maybe a handful of experiences. Yeah. But it was in next to a bedroom. It was also in brake pads for a time too, right?
I believe it still is.
Oh.
It was actually just banned and officially banned in 2024. So they stopped making products in the United States with asbestos in 1978, but they imported asbestos products up until 2024.
Oh, wow. So like if a car was manufactured overseas, it could be in that.
Yes, for sure.
And now a word from our sponsor, Black's Creek Barbecue. If you like barbecue, and who doesn't, Black's Creek Barbecue is it. Barbecued ribs, chicken, baked beans, mac and cheese, cornbread, collard greens, all the essentials and lots of extras like pulled pork and brisket sandwiches, and he's even now serving breakfast. Lorenzo Bennett of Black's Creek Barbecue has been a guest on this show, and during the episode he told me about how he grew up learning how to slow cook and smoke his delicious barbecued meats and sides. He even gave me a tour of his whole operation, and folks, he's got this down to a science. He even selects the best types of wood to use depending on the type of meats he's cooking. I've had his food. It is delicious. I was at his stand the other day getting lunch. I had the burnt ends and the baked beans, my favorites. And while I was there, he had people pulling up from Milton, Dorchester, people driving from Hingham, from all over because they know that Black's Creek Barbecue is the place to go for authentic, delicious barbecue. Give yourself the night off from cooking or get something special for lunch. Follow him on Facebook at Black's Creek BBQ for hours and specials, and you can order online at blackscreekbbq.net. Black's Creek Barbecue at 211 C Street. Now, if you remember Grumpy Whites, then you know exactly where to go for Black's Creek Barbecue. Check it out. Tell them that John from the All About Quincy podcast sent you. And now back to our show. You've talked about lead paint. You've talked about mold and asbestos. What's the biggest surprise that you've found doing your tests and inspections?
The biggest surprise is, You would not always be able to tell what you have going on just by looking at it.
What do you mean by that?
Like you can walk into a house and everything seems perfectly fine, and you don't know what's there until you start testing. There's not always like an obvious sign.
Not always an obvious sign. What would be an obvious sign if they're going to buy a property or something like that? What should somebody be looking for? Maybe if they're taking a walk through a condo or a house or an apartment or something like that. Are there some things that somebody could be aware of that they could be looking for when they're shopping for a place to live, whether they're buying or renting, that would be kind of like a red flag saying, maybe we should look at that before I decide to sign on the dotted line?
Definitely. So, as far as the lead paint and the asbestos, anything built prior to 1978, you can assume would have one or the other or both, unless it's been renovated. But usually there's documentation of that. And then, as far as mold, any water damage, any flooding in the basement, conditions of the windows and of the plumbing.
So like if somebody saw water stain on the ceiling or on the walls or something like that.
Yeah.
And it could be caused by, let's say we had a really bad winter and there was an ice dam in the gutter or something, right?
Yeah, something as simple as that. Something as simple actually as a dog drinking water and spilling it on the floor has caused a mold issue in someone's house.
Really?
Which is terrible for people like us to hear, right? Because my dogs get water everywhere.
Well, yeah, we actually have one of those water hog mats underneath their water bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So it absorbs a lot of that stuff. But Quinn is a very sloppy water drinker. He's like, blah, 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 blah. Trudy is much more cautious when she approaches the water bowl. She sniffs it very carefully before she drinks. And then it's very, very gentle when she's drinking. It's almost like she's sipping.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really interesting how they both approach different things. But something as simple as a water bowl from a dog could cause a mold issue?
I'm not sure about a cat, but a dog for sure.
Why? What happens? Just the water spills on the floor?
Just think of it. Every day, multiple times a day. All it takes is a couple of drops.
Really?
Yes, over time, it can warp down your floor, penetrate through your floor, and it might be an area that you're not even paying attention to. You might have, a thin carpet where the dog drinks off of, or, a little mat that you don't check under.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do after we get finished here. I'm going to go check under that mat.
Yeah. All it takes is 24 hours for a mold issue to occur.
Now, are we talking like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have an asthmatic attack if there's a little drop of water on the floor in 24 hours? Or is this like the start of a problem that over time will grow?
Yes, over time will grow. And I think it definitely depends on the amount of water. So say you had a dishwasher leak, right?
Yeah.
And you let that sit for a day, 2 days. You dried it out, but you didn't dry it out thoroughly. All it takes is for the material to be wet for 24 hours in order for mold to start growing.
That's interesting because in Quincy, we have a lot of granite block foundations. And because we're on top of granite, there's a lot of springs. I mean, we have the Furnace Brook and we have ponds and streams and the underground streams and all of that. Certain areas, lower areas, have problems with flooding when we get really, really heavy rains. Do you recommend that people have dehumidifiers in the basement or something like that? Or what are some of the preventive steps that people can take?
So I actually recommend against dehumidifiers because what that is doing is pulling in moisture. It's trying to get rid of the moisture, but it's really just pulling it in. So instead of a dehumidifier, I would recommend air purifiers. Obviously, any sort of system that can assist with flooding, like a sump pump or a French drain system. But my favorite thing is the air purifier.
Interesting. So if there's moisture in a basement, because I have a dehumidifier, and in the wintertime, there's really nothing going on. The burner's going, and so there's heat and all that kind of stuff that's being generated, and the air is drier. But in the summertime, that thing's going, and we might empty that twice a day. Which is about 3 gallons of water when you think about it, because it's a 1.5 gallon bucket. And you're saying that's just being pulled in from the ground around the house?
Essentially, over time, yes, yeah.
Huh. So if our conversation has prompted someone to say, You know what? Maybe I should have some testing done. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I'm always available for a phone call or a text. I also have a website, which has my email address, so that works as well.
Well, so if people wanted to reach out to you by phone, what's your number?
857-939-6910. And for all of our Quincy residents who are listening, I do offer a Quincy discount.
Oh.
So make sure you mention that.
Okay. Very cool. And your website is?
alphaenvironmentalinspections.com, and make sure that you see the German Shepherd logo.
Zeus is awesome. And Zeus is actually one of the few dogs that Quinn, or actually I should say the few German Shepherds that Quinn will actually play with. He had a bad experience with a couple of German Shepherds right after our other dog Zoe died. And I think that kind of predisposed him to not like Shepherds. But he's cool.
As most dogs don't.
Most dogs don't what?
Like Shepherds.
No?
No.
Oh.
But a lot of them like Zeus.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, Quinn does. You know, they've been playing since they were both puppies. They're about the same age.
I think they're like a month or two apart.
Yeah, that's fun. At any rate, okay. So, Olivia, let me ask this question. I mean, it's the elephant in the room here. How expensive are these tests? I'm sure that they probably vary based on the size of the property. I mean, like if you've got a 3-room condo, it's one thing, but if you've got like a 4-bedroom colonial, that's apples and oranges. Am I right?
More or less, yes. Price does vary depending on, what you're inspecting, like a mold inspection and a lead inspection. They're not exactly the same price, but the price that you're paying is nothing compared to your health.
Right.
The inspections cost a couple of $100, around like $350, $450.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And for the peace of mind, and actually the other thing it does is that once you've got the information from the results of the different tests, then you can make a plan, right?
You can make a plan, and abatement work can cost thousands of dollars. So you'd rather start with the testing, knowing what you have going on before jumping to any conclusions. And that also is something for home buyers. You go to look at a house, and if the house needs to be de-leaded, you could be looking at, an $80,000 project. That's something that you might not be aware of when you purchase the home, but now you're expecting a child, and this is a project that you need done. So, getting a lead inspection or an opinion beforehand can save you money in the long run. Okay,
so if people want to get in touch with you, what's your website address again?
alphaenvironmentalinspections.com.
alphaenvironmentalinspections.com. That's plural on the inspections because you do different kinds of inspections. If there's one thing you want our listeners to come away with, what would that thing be?
If you have any doubts, any suspicions, it never hurts to just give me a call. Explain to me what you have going on. I mean, I don't charge you a fee for answering my phone. I'm human too, and I feel like a little bit of hospitality and grace goes a long way nowadays.
Well, I know you to be a very kind person and an honest person, and I think if people were to reach out to you, that you would take good care of them. And like you said, if they have any questions, just reach out and give you a phone call or send you a text, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What's that number again, please?
857-939-6910.
Very good. Well, Olivia, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to chat with us and give us some really good information about getting your home tested for lead, mold, and asbestos. And you've got a lot of really good information, and I'm sure if people reach out to you, you can set them on the right direction for making some improvements if necessary, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John.
Well, that's it for this episode of the All About Quincy podcast. I want to thank you for listening. I also want to thank my sponsor, Lorenzo Bennett from Blacks Creek Barbecue. If you like barbecue, you got to go to Blacks Creek Barbecue right at 211 C Street. If you remember where Grumpy White's is, then you know exactly where to go for delicious barbecue ribs, chicken, baked beans, mac cheese, cornbread, barbecue sandwiches, and more. Remember to tell Lorenzo you heard it here on the All About Quincy podcast when you stop by. If you know of someone, maybe it's yourself, that is a business owner, a historian, something neat going on in the community, an unsung hero in the city of Quincy, we want to hear about it. If you think you should be on the show, or if you think of someone who should be on the show, we want to know. Just go to allaboutquincypodcast.com, click on the contact button in the upper right-hand corner, and fill out your name, email address, and a short paragraph of why this person should be on the show. We would love your suggestions. Anyway, until next time, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you real soon. Take care.